This move changes everything for the Montreal Canadiens as we get multiple reports revolving around Carey Price. But not only that, with Ken Hughes and Jeff Gordon heading into next season, wanting to bolster this team, this move signifies something bigger happening with the Montreal Canadiens, and this will have Habs fans fired up. We're going to break down these reports on Carey Price, where Jeff Gordon stands heading to next season, and so much more later on in this episode. Before we get into that, we're trying to reach our goal of 18,000 subscribers. So if you're enjoying this daily NHL content on the Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs, all the way to the West Coast with the Vancouver Canucks, make sure to go and hit that free subscribe button. It helps out a bunch, and in return, we'll give you daily updates from all around the league. But with that, Darius, let's just hop straight into this today, where we do get reports coming out from Marco saying Carey Price's contract should be traded this upcoming week, with sources suggesting the San Jose Sharks, the Chicago Blackhawks, or Pittsburgh Penguins as destinations. The Canadiens are trading Price's contract to open themselves for the possibility of another trade. Now, we know Carey Price has not played a game with the Montreal Canadiens for quite some time. Going into this year does not signify that he's going to make a return, and that is why a trade is being lined up. But the Montreal Canadiens are trying to open up more cap space, and moving on from Price's contract, which is $10.5 million against the cap, is something the Canadiens need to do, and it seems like it's going to happen very soon. Now, the big thing with Price's contract, $10.5 million, but $5.5 million paid in bonuses as of July 1st. This is something that's going to be very intriguing for a lot of teams trying to hit the cap. But what is your overall thoughts on something seeming like Carey Price's move is going to signify an even bigger move happening for the Canadiens?
Yeah, I think that this is a move for the Montreal Canadiens that needs to happen. Everybody knows that they have to trade Carey Price's contract. If you look at the current cap situation for the Montreal Canadiens, they are over the cap. So once they trade Carey Price's contract, they'll have almost $6 million to work with in terms of freed up salary cap space. Now, they could use that in season anyway, but of course, there's LTI relief and all of that stuff. They just want to rid themselves, obviously, of that cap hit. Carey Price is effectively retired. He's not officially retired. So obviously, they're still, hanging on to the cap hit. There's teams out there like San Jose that could actually, and we're going to get into the implications of, some of the teams taking on his contract in a little bit too, but there's some teams like San Jose that could, actually make a big difference for them. That could actually be a positive for them in terms of spending. So there's teams like San Jose, Pittsburgh, like they were listed, like even the Chicago Blackhawks, that it makes a lot of sense that they should actually take on his contract for that relief as well. So I think that a trade obviously is imminent here. Carey Price, of course, is not going to play in the NHL, but his contract will be on the way out. But this opens up a lot of possibilities for the Montreal Canadiens, not even in the immediate. They don't have to go out and make a trade tomorrow if they trade Carey Price's contract tomorrow. They can wait. They can see how the team is playing. Where are they in the Atlantic Division, maybe halfway through the season? And then around the trade deadline, they can go out and get a premier player in this league to add to their already pretty impressive younger core, or they can sit on it. Of course, you have contracts coming up. At some point, you're going to have to pay Layden Hudson, right? And all these other guys that are coming up through the system. So obviously, you're going to have to dish out a lot of money to them. The cap is going up about $10 million every summer now. So that is something to consider too. But I do think that they would like to weaponize that. We don't know the future of Patrick Laine either. That's $8.7 million. So they could do something pretty special here at the deadline to rid themselves of a little bit more cap, weaponize their freed up cap, and make themselves a contender here for the next couple of years.
And I think the big thing is looking at the list of teams. The big thing is people might look and say, hey, why would the Sharks want to take on an extra $5 million to pay out to Carey Price and his $10 million cap? But the big thing, they're so close to the cap floor, just $5 million over. This restricts them from going out to make moves. They cannot move on from a $6 million player because this would push them under the floor. So taking on the $10 million opens up more flexibility for the team, but it does continue in. Where we did see last month, Jeff Gordon has made it very clear that there are going to be changes in the roster. Could be at the start of the year, could be halfway through the year. And I think this is signifying something happening with this forward group. Listen, they went out, they made their big splash, getting Noah Dobson for the 16th and 17th pick in this year's draft. You have a defensive core. Yes, you can still move on from Mike Matheson if you wanted to get more, but this team is desperately looking for one position, and that's down the middle. Yes, you have some wingers you could upgrade within the system. Yes, Josh Anderson's contract has not lived up to what fans expected, But Darius, looking at this group, this is a team that made the playoffs last year, playing the Washington Capitals. They want to repeat this, but go deeper. Could you see them going out to look at this team? And we'll touch on two players within this group that need to have bounce back years. But looking at this group, is the center position what you think they need to upgrade the most?
Yes, and it has been for almost 10 years at this point for the Montreal Canadiens. Kirby Dach is not the answer at second line center. I think we know that enough at this point since acquiring him. Obviously a great player, but the health has come into question, right? He hasn't really played that much for the Montreal Canadiens. So I don't think he's necessarily the answer. Again, when he does play, he's a very productive forward. He, can be a second line center, but you need a guy to play second line center that's going to play the majority of the season. So they have to go out, get a center. Like you mentioned, they're very deep on the wing. So deep, in fact, that Puckpedia has Patrick Laine on the fourth line right now, which is a little crazy. You have Demidov, who's going to be playing a full season in the NHL now this year. You expect big things from him, especially offensively. Obviously, the defensive game, much to be desired there still, at least from the outside looking in, my perspective, but he's going to work on that in his first NHL season. So he's up there now. You made that great trade, trading out Logan Mailloux for Bolduc. So he's, a great young player that's going to come in with aspirations of playing on the second line and being a top six forward. And I think that he can be in the league. He's just still so young. He's only 22 years old. So you have him now. That third line to me makes a lot of sense. There's purpose there. I think Newhook is good at third line center, right? Maybe not necessarily a second line center. So to me, it's finding a way to maybe move out Kirby Dach, and then you bring somebody in, weaponizing all the cap space you're going to have from maybe, a couple other trades, obviously moving out Dach if you want to do that. And then obviously the cap space you're going to have available from moving off of Carey Price's contract. So I would agree with you. I think it's the center position. They look pretty good on the wings. They have a lot of young players. The defense core looks really good. It's probably solidified to me at this point. Obviously, a couple guys are interchangeable, and you have a couple guys waiting in the weeds as seventh and eighth defensemen. But for the most part, that's solidified. I think it's really up the middle that they really have to bolster and have that punch behind one of the most underrated centers in the entire league, Nick Suzuki.
And I think the big thing is you have your top line center, Suzuki, having a breakout year last year, leading this team into the playoffs. You have Jake Evans on an incredible contract, one of the best bottom six defensive forwards in the NHL, but it does come down to the two names that we do and Habs fans speak about is Kirby Dach. Listen, like you said, Kirby Dach has had productive years. He's not the most efficient on the faceoff, and I think it falls straight back into Newhook being the exact type of player, a faster player from Newfoundland. Shout out to him, his dad was actually my gym teacher, but Newhook also cannot really get it done at the center position. One of these guys could take the next step. You would love to see someone like this step up within the system, take over the second line center position. But I do think, and listen, Darius, we know Kirby Dach's name is a little interesting. Teams might look at this and saying, hey, we could take this as a project player. Maybe he bounces back. But would you be surprised if a team in a rebuild or looking to really take the next step, the Pittsburgh Penguins even, would look at Dach and say, hey, maybe we'll take a flyer on him and maybe this will end up being a player that steps up when Crosby retires?
I was going to bring up the Pittsburgh Penguins. Maybe it's for Sidney Crosby, although I don't think Sidney Crosby wants to leave Pittsburgh. But of course, a lot of people are talking about that. Evgeny Malkin, I think it's becoming more and more likely by the day that he's going to be traded at this year's trade deadline. It's his last year in Pittsburgh by all reports. Again, that's just the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's a lot of teams out there that I think would like to use or could use a Kirby Dach, even with the injury history. And I'm talking specifically about maybe younger teams that are in a rebuilding phase. I think there's a lot of teams that could use a player like that, and in return you can get maybe not necessarily a veteran, but an effective impact player in the NHL that can play center. So I feel like there's a few teams around the league. The biggest thing though, and the more difficult thing for the Montreal Canadiens in this scenario is there's so many teams around the league right now that want to be competitive and want to compete next year. There's only a handful of teams, not even a handful, maybe three teams, and really only one, if you think about it, in the Pittsburgh Penguins that are truly selling around the league. So that'll be difficult. It's going to have to be a different trade. It's not going to be a scenario where it's clear that the other team is looking to offload this center, right? You're going to have to get creative with the trade. But I do think it's center they have to target, and it might have to be Kirby Dach that's going the other way. And then they have to weaponize their cap space and probably throw in some draft picks, but that's not a problem. Look how many young, great players that they have in the system. And this is just on the roster. Think about what they have in the AHL as well with the Laval Rocket, excuse me.
And I mean, Habs fans, what is your thoughts on this? Do you think Carey Price's contract being moved out in the coming days is signifying a bigger move? Could you see them go out and Kent Hughes acquiring a center or at least actively looking? We've seen names like Mason McTavish still not signed. Could be an option as well. Let us know your thoughts down below. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Darius, and take care.